Hello and welcome. I'm Richard Crispin. I will be your moderator and facilitator for today's Routes training webinar. We are so excited to have as many people dialing in from around the world as we do today. We're going to get started here with our webinar. If you haven't already, please take a moment to fill out our poll. You can see the polling questions by looking at the bottom of your screen. There's a polling function down there. If you click on that, if you're on a Mac or PC device, if you're dialing in coming from a mobile device, that might be at the top of your screen. So take a moment, complete the poll. Please also take a second to click on the chat function there and let us know who you are and where you're dialing in from. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to hand it over now to Michelle Owen from who is the Routes lead. Michelle is one of the great minds and forces behind the partnership for reducing opportunities for the unlawful transport of endangered species. And Michelle is going to give us a little bit of an orientation on what Routes is and what we can expect from Routes. So Michelle, over to you.
Thanks, Richard. And thank you for that very nice introduction. Good morning, everybody. I see quite a few of you are dialing in from stateside. There's a couple of people also saying they're from or representing Asia Pacific. If you have dialed in from that region, good evening and thank you for joining us. As Richard mentioned, I'm just going to give a very quick overview of what the Routes Partnership is and has been doing before handing over to Claire, my colleague, to go into the training in a bit more detail. So first of all, in terms of Routes, very nice acronym for Reducing Opportunities for the Unlawful Transport of Endangered Species. We have been partnering with different stakeholders, primarily including the transport industry, so representatives from IATA and ACI, as well as individual airlines, and also engaging out to service providers to the airport industry, as well as other NGOs, including C4ADS, WWF, who I think is also on the call today, and Traffic as a partner as well, and as well as other government agencies. We are funded by the US government through USAID, and we have, as part of our partnership, input technically and politically from the US State Department, Homeland Security, and CBP, the Border and Patrol. So that's really giving us a good sort of overview of where we need to focus our activities, really to ensure that whatever we are working on is relevant to the operations of the industry. So as I mentioned, we were looking at sort of 5 objectives, and those are around helping to inform, engage, build capacity, look at the supporting frameworks, and how the industry can work collaboratively with enforcement agencies. On the data side, we have produced a number of reports and analytics that are specifically looking at wildlife trafficking through air transport. So the latest report was called In Plain Sight. Some of you may have read it. We are very pleased to announce that the information in that report and continuing analysis is now supported live on an interactive dashboard, which is on the Routes website. We've also been looking at wildlife trafficking gap assessments, trying to identify where, as a best practice, actions can be taken to reduce opportunities that allow trafficking to occur. That information has helped us to reach out to corporate and industry, showing both what actions they can do, how they can communicate with third-party suppliers. So any commitments that are being made, such as signing up to the Buckingham Palace Declaration, they have ways of actually fulfilling those commitments and showing to the public that they are making a stand against wildlife trafficking and following through on that public commitment. In terms of then how industry can respond, one of the sort of main areas has been bringing up awareness and capacity, and I won't go into this in too much detail because this is what the webinar is about, and my colleague Claire will be talking in more detail around what's happened with training. The only thing I would say about this, though, is we have a lot of feedback and input from industry to make this training relevant and suitable to what the industry does. And we do not expect the industry to become enforcement agencies. So this is purely what is feasible within existing operation and mandate. The next sort of aspect is looking at the framework. So we've done a lot of work with IATA. ACI is also now coming on more so to look at how the guidance and the best practices can be developed to inform their members, helping to understand how, as we said, the Buckingham Palace Declaration commitments can be implemented, and showing that there are opportunities for the industry to respond and putting this into the recommended practice for the industry to follow. And then the final sort of objective, but by no means the least, is how to strengthen collaboration with enforcement agencies. We all know that enforcement are very in demand. Their resources can be very limited. So we want to find a way that we can be more effective and efficient as a group responding to wildlife trafficking, be that information sharing, data sharing, or just enabling sort of more eyes and ears to see suspicions and to know who to report them to. And that's an area that we'll be focusing on more as we move forward with routes, as to what mechanisms are available to bring the private sector and the aviation industry into greater communication and information sharing with enforcement staff, so they can actually respond to the criminals who are undertaking wildlife trafficking. This is a very quick overview, so I don't want to take up too much time. As I mentioned before, we do have a website that has all the routes material on and has more description about what we're doing. It's routespartnership.org. And as I mentioned before as well, we've just launched the dashboard, which is more of an interactive resource where you can search on that around what wildlife trafficking is happening in which region, on which routes, destination, origin and transit points. So that was launched last week. Do go and take a look. And I say there's also lots of other resources that are on that website, and some of those Claire will be touching on in a moment regarding what's available from the training aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Before I turn it over to Claire, we did actually get one question that came in, and I think you did answer it, but maybe the person missed it. The question is, how do I get access to the C4ADS reports?
Right, so there's two ways. You can either email Hallie Sachs, who is our communications officer, and her email, I think she will share around with everybody. The other option is to go to the website, and there is a section where you will be able to download all the publications, including the C4ADS reports and webinars that we have conducted on the report. And as I say, as also now there is a dashboard that is interactive as well.
Great, thank you, Michelle. And thank you to that person who submitted that question. Just for everyone else, we will be taking questions through the chat function. Again, you can see the chat function at the bottom of your screen on a Mac or a PC. It might be at the top on a mobile or iOS device. You can chat those questions in. You have the option of sending them to everyone, or you can, as this last person did, send it directly to me. I'm Richard Crispin, and I am your moderator for today. So you can just chat questions directly to me, or again, you can send them to the whole group. I'm now going to turn things over to Claire Beestall, who is heading up training for the Routes Partnership and is one of the great resources here for us and just a font of knowledge around this entire topic. Claire, before you launch in your presentation, I was going to close the poll. Is that okay if I share the results of our poll?
Sounds good.
Okay. So you can all see here, thank you for everyone who did complete the poll. The first question was, between 2009 and 2017, wildlife trafficking seizures in air transport have increased by what percentage? There's sort of a close tie between 40% and 60% of you. About 40% of you said 20%, 60% said 40%. The second question was, on a hot day in July 2018, a passenger arriving from Johannesburg was arrested at Heathrow Airport with 19 bird eggs hidden under his clothing. Which of the following is true about that passenger? He arrived at Heathrow wearing a very thick coat. Some of the eggs hatched during his journey. He was once caught when an airport cleaner reported suspicious activity, or all of the above. And 9 of you said 90%, said all of the above. Claire, what do you think about those first 2 questions? What's the correct answer?
Well, I can tell you that the correct answer, I believe, to the first question, I think most people got it right.
Excellent. So they've increased by 40%. Yeah.
And in answer to the second question, I think nearly everybody did very, very well.
All of the above.
Yeah.
And then our last question was, seizures of this method of wildlife trafficking increased the most between 2016 and 17. Wildlife seizures in cargo, wildlife seizures in passenger clothing, wildlife seizures in checked baggage, or wildlife seizures in carry-on baggage. Sort of a split between cargo and passenger clothing. Slight majority said wildlife seizures in carry-on baggage. What's the correct answer for that one?
I believe it is passenger clothing.
Passenger clothing. So the 30% of you who selected that one, great job on that. So with that, Claire, over to you.
Thank you very much. All right, let's change the slide. And we'll start talking about training. So over the past few years, the Roots training team has been to many, many places, as you can see from the map here, to deliver workshops on wildlife trafficking. We train staff from Africa, from Central, South, Latin America, and the Caribbean. And if you're wondering why the rhino is sitting in the middle of the ocean, that's actually on the top of Mauritius. We provided training in Turkey, Mozambique, Malawi, Hong Kong, Kenya, South Africa, Singapore, Vietnam, and Malaysia. But we cannot go everywhere. We've seen airlines in Qatar and the UAE who developed their own training for their staff based on Roots materials. And in Japan last year, right at the end of last year, ANA organized their own workshop. So we'd like to thank everybody who's put in all this effort, but there are so many more people that we need to reach out to in the aviation industry who can help report and identify wildlife trafficking. Now, I do like to travel, but there is no way that we can go everywhere. So what we've concentrated on over recent times is the development of materials which are designed for industry to use themselves. The content is not technical. We've provided background stories and all the information necessary for companies to actually deliver this training for their own staff. So we've developed this with industry partners specifically for the aviation sector. So these training materials, they're industry relevant, they are user-friendly, they're ready to use, and they are free to download from the Roots website. So we looked at 2 main areas. We looked at general awareness, and we looked at role-specific training. Simply because some people in certain jobs are more likely to see wildlife trafficking than people working elsewhere. But I'll be going into that a little more later. And as Michelle said right at the start, these materials are not designed to turn aviation staff into enforcement officers. They are designed to help aviation staff recognize wildlife trafficking and then know how to act appropriately. So the aim of the training to create an atmosphere where people can support enforcement agencies rather than replace them. So the training that we have basically provides information, basic information, what wildlife trafficking is, where it's happening, what it looks like, and what to do if you see it. So if we start with the general awareness training, this was the first set of training materials that we produced. We have 2 session formats. For companies who think that they can spare half a day to talk to their staff about wildlife trafficking, we have a half-day set of workshop. And then we also have a 1-hour presentation. In addition to that, we have a global and a regional focus. So the regions that we focused on are Africa, the Americas, Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, and South and Central America. And the only way that the regional materials vary from the global ones is that they only provide region-relevant case studies for that region and known trafficking routes which are relevant to the area concerned. So to have a look at the main types of things that we have in these, the general awareness basically consists of 4 modules or 4 sections. We start with an overview of wildlife trafficking because this is something that we work on all the time, but we recognize that people in other sectors don't realize what an issue this is. So we provide an introduction to wildlife trafficking, and we also talk about the risks to legal transport supply chains from the activities of wildlife traffickers. We talk about the laws and regulations and the magnitude and the impacts of the illegal wildlife trade. And then we talk about wildlife trafficking specifically on airlines. We talk about why wildlife traffickers use aviation transport, characteristics of wildlife that comes smuggled by passengers and by cargo, and some examples of the routes which people use to traffic wildlife by air. One of the main things that we do in this is we're very clear that we are talking about illegal wildlife trade. I know that there are many communities who economically wildlife trade is very, very important to them. So we are talking about illegal wildlife trade and not legal wildlife trade. And we make a very firm distinction on that right from the start. The next section, we talk about how you can identify wildlife traffickers. So that gives you people a bit more information on how traffickers smuggle wildlife by air, whether it's by baggage, cargo, post, or by courier, and things you can look out for that would help you to identify wildlife traffickers. So for example, it would talk about actually the case of the bird smuggler who was the subject of the second poll question. He arrived in Heathrow on a very hot day, but he was wearing a very, very thick coat. And this is a sort of a simple thing. None of this is very technical. It's all just common sense, but it's the sort of things that staff working in the aviation industry can look out for and then report if they think there is something suspicious going on. Which brings me to the final module in the general awareness training, report and respond. So this talks about risk of handling wildlife, and that's risk from injury or disease. It provides guidance on minimizing risk and guidance on reporting of wildlife crime. And actually the slide that I've used there is one we used in training last week in Singapore. So if you work in Changi Airport in Singapore and you think you've spotted wildlife, those are the numbers to call. So then, oh, sorry, Richard.
Yeah, Claire, I have two questions have come in. One was, in what languages are the general awareness training materials available? And the other one was that you meant, well, actually, I'll let you answer that question first.
Okay. At the moment, we've developed the materials in English, and they are available all of them are available in English from the website. But they will be available in Chinese, in Spanish, and in French as well very shortly. The translators are working on those as I speak. Excellent.
And then the other question was, you mentioned you don't want to travel everywhere. Does that mean that you have train the trainer options? Or how do I get the train? I guess the question there is how would I offer training not using one of you?
We can certainly, I mean, it's one of the things we have talked about. And I think if someone is interested in Train the Trainer, then it would probably be best to get in touch with the Roots website. And we'll see what we can do to assist. Maybe it would be possible to run some sort of training through a webinar, even if we weren't actually able to turn up in each location. But yeah, that's an interesting question.
Gotcha. And then one last question. Are those modules available for free, and what would be the best way to access them?
All the modules are available free. They are all available to download from the Roots website.
Excellent. So more languages coming, ready in English now. Get in touch if you want to do Train the Trainer, and it's all free and available for download on the website. Excellent.
Yep.
Back over to you.
Thank you. So that was the general awareness materials. And then the next thing, as I mentioned earlier, we thought that, or we were actually being told, and we had realized that people in certain situations will see different things, and some are more likely to be able to spot wildlife trafficking than others. So what we did was we held a roundtable meeting a couple of years ago. We had representatives from ACI and also a number of airlines, and we talked about who would spot, who would be able to spot wildlife trafficking as it was happening. What sort of things would they probably need to know, and how best to deliver information through training to these individuals. So we came up with a list of people, so passenger check-in, passenger screeners, cabin crew, cargo acceptance, cargo and baggage screeners, and ground handlers. So what we then went to do was we went to develop role-specific training materials for each of these different roles. And we've done this in 3 different modes of delivery. So these are now available as eModules. I'm going to talk you through all of these except for the presentations, because I think everybody can imagine what the presentation is like. These again are available for download from the Roots website. We produce something called a Toolbox talk, and Toolbox talks basically they're very effective as a refresher for training or awareness materials that people have been exposed to already. And basically what they are is it's like a briefing you give to staff, a small group of staff, maybe before they go on shift during the day. Because not all companies use eModules, we also were asked to develop presentations as well. And basically the message in each of these is the same. The message in the Toolbox talks is a lot shorter, but in the eModules and the presentations, the message is, this is what wildlife trafficking is, this is where it's happening, this is what it looks like, and what to do if you see it. So I know that we were concerned that we didn't want anybody who is responsible for screening of baggage, cargo, or even passengers to stop looking for the things that they are mandated to search for. So we have made it very, very clear that the prime role of a screener is to identify dangerous devices, articles or substances which may be used to commit an act of unlawful interference. So we have kept that is foremost when we're talking to any audience which are passenger, cargo or baggage screeners. But what we also say is that screening for these items may also lead to detection of other illegal activities such as wildlife trafficking. So we've made that point very, very clear when we're talking to any of the screeners. So onto the eModules. So you can access these via the Roots Partnership website. You can click on the link there. It will open up another window. You can actually take the course immediately from there. Or a company can choose to integrate this into their existing learning management system. Each of these takes about 30 minutes to complete. And people who use it, they can stop and they can go back and have another go if, if something cropped up and they're not able to finish it in one session. It's split into 3 sections. So basically it's wildlife trade and trafficking, how to detect smuggling, and what you should do. So it very much follows the format of all of the other materials that we have provided so far. We have the learning objectives are very clear in there. So it's an understanding of trade and trafficking, awareness of the risks that wildlife trafficking poses to aviation, and recognition of signs to help identify and then report wildlife trafficking. At the end of the eModule, there is a final assessment. And I will show you a little bit more about that later. As well as that final assessment, we also have self-assessment questions before you get to that point at the end. These are scenario-based, so these will look different for each of the roles. I think this is the one from the cargo and baggage screening module. The answers given to these do not count in the final assessment. We've tried to make the eModules interactive and engaging, so please go and take a look afterwards if you can. As well as this, we have the summary of the key points, which are displayed towards the end of the module. And then after that, we go into the final assessment. This is one of the example questions. And we ran through the quiz recently at a meeting of the Association of Asia Pacific Airlines Cabin Safety Working Group. They did very well, I have to say. They attained a perfect score. The pass score is actually set at 70% automatically on the system. But if a company chooses to run this through their learning management system or LMS, then you can change that if you wish. Excuse me, we've just got a police car going past my window. Okay, the eModules can be used on other devices other than a computer, so you can use them on a mobile phone, Windows, Mac, iOS, or Android devices. You can use them on a tab. So we try to make them as easy to use as possible. And next, the Toolbox talks. As I said, these are more of a refresher training, basically before the start of a shift. Each set comes with 4 separate talks, which are specific to that specific job role. This is the example I've given from the cabin crew one. So you have 4 discussion topics, and at the end of these, there are also extra images and examples that someone can print off if they're doing this on paper, or it's actually provided, I think, as a PDF or a PowerPoint. So if you want to run this through a screen, it's possible to do this. The idea is that each talk would be given separately. Possibly you would give maybe one a week or one every 2 months or one every quarter. And here's an example of the different talks that we have for each of the roles. You can see that they are very, very similar, but they are specific to each of the roles that we're talking about. And if you have a look at the 4th talk for the cabin crew, you'll see that links up to IATA's best practice for safe handling of escaped animals in the cabin, which can be downloaded either from the Roots Partnership or the IATA website. These are very easy to conduct. They don't give very much information, but they do provide a little bit of an introduction. And as I say, they take probably 10 to 15 minutes to give.
Claire, we've had a couple of other questions come in. One of the questions, well, actually 2 regarding you mentioned that people could put materials in their own learning management systems. One question was is that true for all the modules, or is that just for the role-specific modules?
That's true for the eModules. So you can run the eModules alongside, if your company does e-learning, you can run the Roots modules alongside your other eModules that your company runs. If you want, we are able to provide all of the source files. So if you are happier doing that when your company logo appears on the eModules, then you would be able to do that as well.
And then can people put their logos on the materials that go in?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they can put their logo on, and if they want to translate those, then we would encourage you to do so. We are translating, as I mentioned earlier, all of the Roots materials with the exception of the eModules. But with those source files, it will be possible for each company to do that themselves.
Great. And then I think, Michelle, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Just very quickly, if there is interest on putting the general awareness training into an LMS system, then please let us know and we can see what sort of demand that will be and whether we can support that in terms of its convergence, or to contact us if you would like the material to adapt it yourselves. As Claire mentioned earlier, a couple of airlines have taken the information out of the material that we've produced to produce their own internal training. So we're very happy to provide that technical support as well. So do just contact us if you have interest of either utilising what's available or adapting the material that we have.
Terrific, thank you. And actually, I'm glad you're here because I think these other 2 questions may be for you, Michelle. One of the questions was, is the data on the dashboard accessible for research? And can we also contribute the seizure data that we collect from different sources?
Okay, that gets into a whole different arena. In terms of access to and data sharing, very open to doing that, obviously within an environment where there's agreements around the permissions that data is allowed to be shared. So again, that comes into more of a discussion about with C4ADS, who is our partner, looking at the data analytics and probably agreements around what data can be shared and how it can be utilized. But it definitely is an area that we can discuss, no problem.
Excellent. And then the last question, sort of kind of on the border there, is to interest and encourage staff to report about their doubts. I need examples of seizures. How was discovered? What happened after? Arrests, fines, what happened to the animals seized? Are there such examples in the training materials or regularly updated on the Routes website?
Okay. I'm going to hand that one over to Claire.
We have examples, multiple examples of seizures throughout the training materials. We do try and update these when we can. We also always, when we give examples of seizures, if it comes from a news story, in the notes section of the PowerPoint, there will always be a link to that story. Sometimes we will report on this within the training, but obviously the justice takes a little time to work its way through. So you may not have information on the fines or the arrest. But generally, if you actually Google for more information around those things, then you should be able to find out more if you want to add those to the notes when you're delivering that.
Excellent. And I think there was one other question about that. Nope, that's all. I did ask, a couple people have mentioned that they're having a bit of a problem with the connection. I'll just remind everyone that we are recording this webinar and it will be available after the fact. Claire, back over to you.
Thank you very much. So this is just a recap slide. So general awareness materials, half day, 1 hour. The global materials we have, but we also have region specific for the 6 regions given there. And then for operations focus as eModules, Toolbox talks, or presentations for each of those 6 roles as well. All the materials can be downloaded free of charge from the Roots website. The presentations, when you download those, they'll be coming to you as PDF files. You just need to get in touch with us through the Roots website and we will send you the full PowerPoint files. And as I just mentioned in answer to the previous question, all of these come with full presenter notes as well. So you can use them exactly as they are, or you can adapt them. You can add some examples of wildlife traffic and seizures from your location, or if there's a seizure which happens to hit the press in a big way, for example, the orangutan that was found in the passenger's bag in Denpasar in Bali just recently, feel free to do that. The idea of these is to make the materials as relevant as possible to the audience that you're talking to. So the materials, I said you can get them from the website. You'll see there we've got the training tab which comes down, and you can access all of those through there as well. Michelle was just talking actually about the data dashboard, and that comes through the resource library tab. And there's the link there. We have more on the website other than just the training. Here we have the resource library as well. And the idea is that the materials there can support a company-wide response to wildlife trafficking. So some of the things that we have available on there, we've got do's and don'ts, some more information on aviation risks, on wildlife trafficking, guidance on how to take action, and guidance on next steps if a company wants to do more to stop wildlife trafficking as well. So this is basically a broader package to support your company's efforts to combat wildlife trafficking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. Next, I'm going to bring in our colleague Jian Jiang from Airports Council International to give us a little bit of the airport's perspective here in just a moment. Before I do that, I do want to thank everyone who has been chatting in questions. Please do keep those questions coming. I do have a couple more for you, Claire, before we move on to June. How do I get face-to-face training?
Face-to-face training. We basically what we have been doing is we have been looking at areas where wildlife trafficking happens quite often or very often, and that's actually guided us in where we're able to go out and do the training. It is possible. I mean, one of the things that ANA did was they actually held their own training, but they used an outside trainer, and we can certainly assist you. If we're not able to actually come out ourselves, we can certainly assist you to find somebody who will be able to provide that for you.
Terrific. And then last question, how do I know if trafficking happens where we fly, where my airline flies?
Well, the data dashboard is the excellent way to actually determine the wildlife trafficking problem that your country has. And also, if you have a look at the C4ADS reports, the in plain sight and flying under the radar, that would tell you an awful lot probably about wildlife trafficking in your particular area.
Terrific. Thank you. Again, folks, please do keep those questions coming. Now it's my pleasure to turn things over to Jion Jeong from Airports Council International. Jion has been such a terrific resource to us on the Routes Partnership and helping us understand the perspective of their members and what it's like on the ground in these different airports. So, Jion, over to you.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for excellent presentation, Michelle, and also Claire. I just wanted to echo the value of training materials from Routes Partnership to the airport and also broader aviation industry for us to deliver training and for us to raise awareness within this industry. So I wanted to just touch upon why our training is important for ACI and I guess broader aviation industry as well, and what ACI has been doing in terms of training, and also what we plan to do for the next year and 2 years regarding training. So we see that the biggest role that airports can play in terms of wildlife trafficking and stopping and combating it is to facilitate discussions and also raise awareness about the issue within the general airport transport sector. So in that sense, ACI has been really trying hard to promote and support members to take action, engaging different stakeholders at airports and discuss supporting the discussion about what wildlife trafficking is and how they can support the enforcement in their airports, as well as other industry stakeholders to take appropriate action. And in that sense, training is a main step or main sort of platform to raise awareness in this sector. So you cannot take, because you cannot take action unless you know what the problem is, what the issue is, and what is at stake, and what you can do, or who you should contact, or who you can help and support in terms of seizures and everything. So we definitely see value in all the training materials that is developed by Routes. So general awareness training, of course, it informs not just the airport staff, but also any airport stakeholders of the issue. So it's really important to sort of deliver that message. And also regional focus ones are sort of provides that the region-specific sort of routes and most trafficked wildlife for that specific region and patterns, etc., making it make sure that like the staffs who receive that kind of training can personalize the issue. And also the operations focused ones or role specific training materials allow staffs to spot illegal or missing behaviors during their day-to-day job. So it is really important for them to, those materials to aid them and personalize the issue and making it self-sustaining one. So we see that the key importance for training is also the sustainability. Partnership program, this Routes partnership is time bound, and we want to make sure that that we can deliver the maximum sustainability as possible. And for that, ACI believes that training is the most important one to for that sustainability. So what ACI has been doing regarding training for the past year and so is to support the development of routes training materials suited for airports and airport staffs. So what I mean by that is to explore the best training delivery methods or materials, what we can, how we can support for easy access and easy use, and as well as airport stakeholders. And at the same time, we wanted to make sure that airports' considerations and concerns and specificities are sort of integrated into routes materials so that they can take it on board as much as possible. Also, we've been supporting the partnership to deliver training workshops to our members in especially developing countries in Africa and also Latin America and Caribbean, so that maximum delivery and maximum outreach can be facilitated. And also, we try to sort of have training workshops for specific airports, a couple of specific airports located in Asia Pacific and also others in the region. We've been also supporting our members to take routes materials and implement it into their training portfolio. We see more interest from our members as they get used to or get as they get aware of wildlife trafficking. We see more feedback and increase in how to sort of implement it and how to sort of support others who are within who are working within their airport to take those training materials available from routes, etc. So we've been supporting that as well. To facilitate and ensure the maximum sustainability, we plan to do a couple more actions within the period that we have under routes partnership. We see that training is the best tool, so how to ensure the sustainability is really important for us. And we want to enhance and that way we want to enhance and maximize the visibility of the materials that we have, visibility of the materials that routes has already has developed and that we will modify as well. And we want to ensure that easy and free or low cost access to the materials are possible. And that way we can ensure the sustainability. So we target to develop a training video with the support from Claire's team to be used by our members in ways that maximize visibility for any people working at the airport. So one venue we found was to use the training opportunities sort of prescribed and for all onboarding personnel at airports. And once the video is finalized, we hope we can sort of encourage our members to use it in the best way possible in their own setting. And we also are trying to explore opportunities to include wildlife trafficking into regular ACI training curricula, including the online training curricula. We see a lot of sort of particular opportunity and interest from our members regarding eModules, as I think participants to this webinar have already asked. So because eModules allow like easy access and visibility. It doesn't depend on the region, country, time difference, financial support, or anything like that. And we want to take that into our integrate into our learning management system, so that we can help our members to take those courses if they don't have, if they cannot integrate into their own system, and also develop ways to support our members to take those routes material into their own LMS systems so that they can teach their staff in the best way possible. So overall, we want to maximize the sustainability of the program, and the best way we see is that it's through training. Thank you.
Thank you, June. A couple of questions have come in. Would love to get your feedback on. First, one of the questions was, what kind of feedback have you gotten from airports so far?
They really like the eModules, I can say that for sure. And that's why we were like seeing a lot of sort of interest to have eModules specific for ACI and specific for airport setting. And also the other one was the idea of having a video. So videos are easy access, and it's short and sweet. So they wanted some like short and sweet way to explain to their stakeholders as well as their staff, and the best way they saw was videos and eModules.
Terrific. The other question I got was, what does ECI stand for?
Oh, okay. It's ACI. It's Airports Council International. It's a trade representative of airports.
Okay, that may be my mispronunciation. ACI. Then the other question I got, in some countries, staff may take important risks when reporting a trafficking incident. In these conditions, it is very difficult to train or inform staff about what to do. What are your suggestions in these cases? And Gianna, you're happy for you to take that question. I think, Claire, that might also be a good question for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Richard, could you just repeat that again, please?
Sure. In some countries, staff may take important risks when reporting a trafficking incident. In these conditions, it is very difficult to train or inform staff about what to do. What are your suggestions in these cases? I think this is a question about staff feeling safe in reporting.
Yeah, I mean, the reporting conditions vary in each location, and that's something we found, you know, as we've been doing the training. The example I showed you was from Singapore. I know that some places will have like a whistleblowing policy, but I accept that in some locations it can be difficult. Yeah, I think it's basically it's good to have a hotline that you can report to. And it seems to be difficult in some locations to determine exactly what that is. And I think that would be a good first step, is actually, you know, if you're at your location, you haven't been particularly active in helping to stop wildlife trafficking, I think one of the first things you should do is find out how your staff can best report it and what the safest way for them to do that would be.
Excellent. Another question for Joan. The question is, have you seen different uptake in different regions, and if so, why?
Yes, I do see different uptake from different regions. I think it depends on how big wildlife trafficking is an issue to that specific region, and also how much sort of personal interest is and how much exposure they have regarding wildlife. So let's say if you see a lot of animals or wildlife on your day-to-day like work, etc., you get to be more interested in helping and stopping wildlife trafficking crimes. So they tend to see more of they tend to be more active, and also if obviously if it's a big issue in that region, particular region, then they are quite active as well.
Terrific, thank you. Another question, I think this might be for Claire. Are there similar training materials for seaports?
Not at the moment, no. But I think actually a lot of the things that we're asking aviation people to look out for, particularly on the cargo acceptance side, would probably be appropriate for seaports. But actually, on a separate initiative, I can let you know that we're also working with. It's another USAID funded project. We're also working with FIATA, which is the Freight Forwarding Association, and we are now working on an eModule for their staff, which will be available from their website. So although that is not specifically maritime, part of it will obviously talk about maritime movement of wildlife.
Got it. So stay tuned is perhaps the answer there?
I think so, yes. Yes, so eModules for FIATA.
eModules for FIATA coming up. Again, I want to just let everyone know, if you want to submit a question, you can submit a question using our chat function. We are about 10 minutes from the end of our webinar here, so we do have time to take additional questions if anyone has one. And again, you can submit those questions using the chat function. The other question I had was, Joan, you mentioned about the visibility of materials. Could you say more about that, creating greater visibility at airports or for airport staff?
Yeah, so the video that we are trying to develop with Claire's team is to ensure that maximum visibility is possible. So there are specific training sort of regulations on the onboarding staff for who are working at airports. So be it cleaner, or be it a tenant, be it a ground handler or airline staff, check-in staff, anyone who has access to secured areas in the airports. And we want to we think that that's the best sort of venue for us to include wildlife trafficking and raise awareness for everyone who is working at airports, because the airports, the staffs, the personnel who are working at airports are not necessarily airport employee. A lot of the case it's not that way, and if we just target our members' staff, we don't have maximum visibility. But we think if you have a video that sort of can approach all the other people who are working at the airport, then we can ensure the maximum visibility.
Terrific. Now I have a question, because I'm just looking over who's dialed in. I see a number of folks have dialed in from regional airports councils or country airports councils. What would be your recommendations to them, June, on how to get started or how to encourage airports in their areas to work on this?
First, I want to thank everyone who joined from our regional offices. I think the best approach is sort of stay tuned of what we are doing with Routes Partnership, and also inform us if there is any interest from their members. So ACI is a federated organization, meaning all the regions' information and inputs should be sort of flow into ACI World so that we can support our regions. So I encourage all our regional partners to contact their members and also see if there is any interest or support needed, and let us know so that we can communicate that with the partnership.
Terrific. And Claire, a similar question for you. We have a number of airlines who dialed in. What would be your recommendations to them on how to get started?
I think checking out the Routes website and seeing the materials that are available. There's plenty there which can help to guide you if you're just starting on this. There's plenty there to help guide you if you're already starting down the road on this as well. So do get in touch with us if there's anything that you feel that you would like, or let me move that back up, or have a look and see at the materials on the website. But yeah, if you have other questions that can't be answered by those, then please get in touch and we'll be able to assist you.
Terrific. And I see Hallie has also chatted in some initial guidance materials and where to get those from the Routes website. Claire or June, any last thoughts here before we move towards closing?
Basically, I mean, it's just what I was saying. If there's any help you think you would like, then do get in touch. You know, there's a contact email on the website, and we will get back to you and see how we can assist you.
Terrific. June, last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the same from me as well. If there's any particular interest or input that is needed, please let us know so that we can support you.
Terrific. Thank you both. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, June, for a great presentation and for such important information. Michelle, any closing thoughts from you?
Thanks, Richard. Also, just to say thank you to Claire and June for the presentations and advice. I would also reiterate, for any airports, please contact ACI World, June, if you have any questions or need support. Likewise, IATA, their Geneva office, contact their environment department. The contact there is John Godson. To seek input from them, they do have an internal task force working on wildlife trafficking. So basically the industry associations are there, they're connected, and really are the point where we're seeking input to know how we support you in efforts to stop wildlife trafficking through your operations. On that note, I would just like to say thank you to everybody who has joined the webinar. It's great to see so many people, and thank you all for sort of highlighting where you're from. That helps us a great deal to know we're getting our message out to the right people. Hallie, I will probably be sharing a link to the recording of the webinar. Please do feel free to share that with your colleagues. And again, do feel free to contact us if you want further information, or if you would like to sort of inform us about the things that, when you're looking at the resources that are there, if you think there's something missing or there's a real need, let us know. As much as possible, we'll try to take that into consideration. with what we're planning to do, but we'll only know what we need to do with your input. So thank you very much for your participation.
And thank you, Michelle. I hope everybody is hearing the message here, which is that there is a lot of material available, some really great training materials available, some really great help and resources available to you. All you really have to do is reach out. You can get help through ACI World. You can also get help directly on the Routes Partnership website, and that's routespartnership.org. And where there's a real interest to hear from you and to really have your voice and your input help to shape these materials and make sure that they continue to be relevant to you and all that you do. Again, I want to add my thanks to everyone who's dialed in. I want to add my thanks also to all of our presenters for taking the time to share this great information. As Michelle mentioned, we are recording the webinar, and it will be available to you. If you came in through an Eventbrite, you will get that the recording of the webinar sent directly to you. If you did not, all you have to do is email Hallie Sachs, that's Hallie, Hallie, .Sachs, SACKS, @traffic.org, and she will send it to you. And her email address and contact information is in the chat there if you don't have access to it. Again, my name is Richard Crispin. I've been your moderator today for this Routes Training Resource webinar, and we are so happy that you could all join into us. I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.